In the first quarter of the first millennium BCE, just before the Assyrian conquest of Babylonia, the ancient centers in Ur, Uruk, Nippur, Dilbat, Borsippa, Kish, Kuta, Sipar, and Babylon conducted a well-established administrative system, a flourishing economy, a well-organized ritual life, a strong priestly class, and a well-developed material and spiritual culture. Nonetheless, the Babylonian cities didn't have any tradition of military and political cohesiveness, and the natural inclination was towards independent existence. Nippur was the center of Assyrian rule. In Babylon, a Babylonian king sat enthroned, and some cities like Babylon, Ur, Uruk, Kuta, Nippur, Borsippa, and Sipar were ancient and important centers of ritual, which also played a key political and economic function. Alongside of these various tribes, mainly Chaldeans and Arameans, ruled over extensive parts of the country, and this contributed to the overall destabilization of the relationship among the various cities. Assyrian control over Babylonia lasted from 747 to 626 BCE and accelerated the unification of the diverse elements residing in the area. It led to a gradual process of emergence from its economic weakness and political discord to a national awakening and building a strong, cohesive kingdom. The population in the ancient centers united with the tribal groups of Arameans and Chaldeans who lived in and around those cities. This assemblage constituted the basis of the Neo-Babylonian kingdom that, as we already described, with the help of the Medes, succeeded in freeing itself of Assyrian domination. Nabopolassar was gradually acknowledged king of all the cities in Babylonia and officially ascended the throne in November 22nd or 23rd, 626 BCE. The Neo-Babylonian kingdom thrived rapidly under his rule. In less than 20 years, it progressed from the status of a subject kingdom fighting for its independence to an empire that had established its control over Mesopotamia and began the fight against Egypt for control of Syria and the land of Israel. The direct conflict between Babylon and Egypt first began in 609 BCE. The failure of the Assyrians and Egyptians to restore the control over Haran symbolized the final disappearance of Assyria from the arena. At this point, the Euphrates was the boundary between Babylon and Egypt. Direct conflict began between these two powers, which had inherited the territories of the Assyrian Empire. The Babylonians had two major reasons to battle Egypt over control of the region of Syria and the land of Israel. From the economic point of view, the Babylonians had a deep interest in taking control of the area west of the Euphrates because their country had been hard hit during the decades of struggle against Assyria. In addition to the physical devastation, the economy was damaged during the long years of war, commercial life didn't function very well, and the agricultural infrastructure was destroyed. After freeing itself from Assyria's dominations, Babylonia required a process of rebuilding in all areas of the economy. This ranged from the physical rehabilitation of the cities, commerce, agriculture, and craft industries, through the location of source of raw materials and the training of qualified, skilled workers. The Medes had taken control of the major roads in northern Mesopotamia, as well as the important sources of raw materials in southeast Anatolia, making it difficult for this rehabilitation to proceed. As a result, Babylonian revenues had shrunk dramatically, just as the time when rehabilitation and rebuilding of Babylon, together with all of the other cities in Babylonia, required a steady supply of goods and raw materials. In light of these factors, it is easy to understand the tremendous potential envisioned by the Babylonians with regard to all the area across the Euphrates, the area that they denominated Khatuland. They were much taken with the possibility of plundering all of the territories conquered, receiving generous tribute from the kingdoms of the region, collecting annual taxes, and obtaining goods and raw materials. It is also reasonable to assume that they were aware of the economic potential of trade with the Arabs, of the maritime trade, and the natural resources that the region offered, beginning with the trees and stones that were so lacking in Mesopotamia. I can even assume that the economic factor was also an additional incentive for the Babylonian aspiration to control Egypt, just as Assyria had done not many years previously, and to harness the economic potential of this region to the benefit of the Babylonian economy. From the strategic military point of view, the Babylonians were unable to reconcile the Egyptian presence on the Euphrates River because this represented a constant threat to Babylonian control of Mesopotamia. Besides the tangible danger of an Egyptian invasion beyond the Euphrates, their presence held the danger of encouraging anti-Babylonian treaties with Egyptian support. At this stage, the Babylonians had two different spheres of interest. The immediate sphere of interest was to the need to push the Egyptians as far as possible from the banks of the Euphrates and to establish Babylonian outposts on the other side of the river. These outposts could be a bridgehead for delivering troops into the overland combat in the region of Syria and the land of Israel. The remote sphere of interest was a direct consequence of driving the Egyptians westward from the Euphrates. It is doubtful whether the Babylonians planned in advance how far to the west and south they would force the Egyptians. It is similarly doubtful whether they understood the significance of Syria and the land of Israel as a security zone, whose control was so crucial to keeping the Egyptians at bay and ensuring Babylonian control of Mesopotamia. It would seem that for the Babylonians, Egypt was a chief target. They understood that to guarantee their mastery throughout the Khatu-land area, they had to conquer Egypt and establish the rule there, similar to what the Assyrians had done only short period before. Within this in mind, one may understand why, from the very outset of their rule in the region, the Babylonians had concentrated their attention on the coastal region along the Via Maris leading to Egypt. And what about Judah? Judah was not a player in the game of these large powers, but soon we will understand what was Judah's role and what was the implication of these events on this small kingdom.